when told the information that this person was told, turned around, violated Andy's trust. Andy didn't say this to this person, knowing that it would be shared to the wider world. You're not supposed to have a complete understanding of the inner workings of the band and why they're doing what they're doing and their full motivations on any given thing.
Now, I know I'm opening up yet another video by talking about some sad news. This is the second video in a row where I probably have my face in the thumbnail looking kind of distraught or sad, but genuinely, this is some of the worst news that I've ever heard in my life, and Zoomers across the world are going to reel in absolute agony. Now, if you've got no idea what I'm talking about, there's a clue in the shirt that I'm wearing. This very nice Death Grip shirt. Now, one thing I will mention is I am no music aficionado. As you know, leave me alone! Metro's booming track, Good Kid and Mad City. So yeah, I really do try to stay away from music. I stay in my own lane as a small little white boy. I listen to Blade, Echo 2K, and basically Death Grips. But now it seems to have came out that Death Grips, the band, are quite possibly disbanding. It might actually be so over. You know that meme of the guy pointing at the chalkboard? It's like nothing ever happens. This could be actually something that might happen. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is because after the whole Good Kid, Mad City, Metro's booming track, I should stay well away from music as much as possible, which, yeah, valid point. But Death Grips is unironically a band that I grew up with. Okay, Holy White incoming, but I think when I was growing up at school, the two groups that I would listen to would be Young Lean and also Death Grips.
Isn't Young Lean a solo artist?
Yeah, shut up. Now, if you are a certified pyrocynical old head and you've been watching the channel for a while, you probably noticed that I sprinkled a lot of Death Grips references around videos. I mean, here's a good example, right? Someone re-uploaded an outro montage from one of my older videos before I actually had outro montages. That was 7 years ago, by the way. Oh, God, I'm old. Jesus Christ. But yeah, you can just hear like, oh, I got that process touch. But yeah, basically, I was just kind of rent-free about Death Grips. I will be honest, in the past couple of years, I've listened to them less and less, but that's mostly because of their album output really slowing down. But like I said, there's been a lot of hearsay online that Death Grips could actually be shutting down. Like, for example, this post here on the subreddit saying they posted this online, they're never coming back. We are now at our best, and so Death Grips is over. We've officially stopped all currently scheduled live dates and cancelled our upcoming double album, The Powers That Be. We'll still be delivered worldwide after this year via Harvest, Third World Records. Death Grips was always and has been a conceptual art exhibition. The handwriting after that gets even less legible, but obviously there's a pretty glaring flaw with this being the breakup message, mostly because they're talking about Powers That Be, their upcoming album, despite the fact that Powers That Be came out 10 years ago. Now, if you look up a lot of news articles, they will talk about the possibility of Death Grips breaking up, and 99% of these articles will reference this DM conversation with one of the band members, Andy Martin, basically saying, yeah, it's over. I can't even take that sentence seriously. Stefan doesn't want to do it anymore. Stefan being Stefan Bernay, who's the lead vocalist in Death Grips. You know, the guy that goes, okay, that was the wrong movement to make. I was meant to be grabbing a microphone, but you understand. But is this DM real? Is Death Grips truly over? Or is this an attention grab from someone on the Death Grips subreddit? Well, considering part of the community likes to piss on the floor at live shows, we'll have to dig a little bit deeper. By the way, the pissing on the floor gag, that is not an actual joke. That has happened multiple times at shows. I've talked about this before. I've actually done an entire video talking about Death Grips and just how, like, they have some of the worst people in their fan base imaginable. I get it. 99% of the members, great people. I've gone to shows before. I've been to the ones in London, somehow survived. I went to the ones in Warsaw in Poland. Amazing people there. But unfortunately, Death Grips is unanimously known for having some bad actors in the community. There are clips of people basically just throwing missiles on stage to the point where the band members are like, nah, fuck this. You're not treating us with respect. We're just going to walk out. When I went to the show in Warsaw, it was absolutely chill. I met many of you guys there as well, and you were just all the nicest people. Some people there got a little bit too drunk, definitely. I think I spent a quarter of the show just trying to help this random guy who apparently went on his own and got absolutely plastered, and he was just sat there like he was about to have a stroke. I do want to say the difference between the Warsaw show in Poland and the London show in Brixton was like night and day. Again, Polish people, some of the nicest people you can ever meet on the planet. But before that, I went to Brixton, and this was my first experience ever seeing Death Grips live. And there was a guy in front of me that was 6'4", and he was clearly off his face on coke. And you know, he was looking around doing the doing the loose jaw thing that cokeheads do for some reason. And keep in mind, he was completely off his rocker. This was the pre-show, and I think this was infamous for being one of the longest pre-shows imaginable, where all it was just a red light, and they were playing this ascending music, and I think it went on for about an hour and a half. Great high there, buddy. Now, if you didn't know, Death Grips are an experimental American hip-hop band that are based in Sacramento in California. So technically, they're probably the only good thing to actually come out of California. One thing I do love about Death Grips is they have some of the most bizarre collabs imaginable. Like, did you know that they actually did a song with Robert Pattinson? Robert Pattinson as in Batman, as in, I keep seeing the Reddit posts where he acts like an incel. They also kind of had a collab with Shrek as well. Andrew Adamson, who directed Shrek 1 and 2, he actually gave some vocals for one of their most recent albums. And the inspiration goes really far. There are obviously a lot of mainstream artists out there that were massively inspired or fans of Death Grips. I mean, for example, the infamous clip of Tyler, the Creator, going to a Death Grips mosh pit and basically being the only person moshing. But also people you might not expect, like, for example, the late David Bowie in his final album, Black Star, he directly cited Death Grips as a reference. So even if you haven't really listened to Death Grips or don't really plan on listening to them at all, they've still had a huge impact on the music scene in general. Now, the band was formed all the way back in 2010. That was before Fortnite, so most Zoomers will have no idea who Death Grips are. Fortnite actually came out 7 years after Death Grips was formed. This goes out to you. To all the old heads. And they came out with a bunch of albums. You got Ex-Military, Money Store, No Love, Deep Web, Government Plates. Ex-Military, you'll never get it on Spotify. Good luck. You will never get it. I've seen some people try to upload it as like a podcast to get past the copyright. There are 50 billion samples per song in Ex-Military. That is why you will never see it on Spotify. I also want to say best song in that album was definitely Lord of the Game, but this is also the same person who rated Lil Uzi's cover of Echo 2K's GTR that he posted on his TikTok less than 24 hours ago. Now, one thing Death Grips is always known for is being quite mysterious to their fans. That's why when this, allegation of them breaking up came about, people were definitely a little bit skeptical. I mean, in the past, they've straight up just not shown up to performances and also leaking an album early to get full-on dropped from their label. By the way, if you know the particular album I'm talking about where they used an erect penis for the album cover, that is real, by the way. Here's the album. This is the mainstream one. You can still find the actual one online. Now, originally they disbanded around 10 years ago, but that's when the Twitter account BB Poltergeist came back online saying Death Grips is online. So yeah, Death Grips have been very elusive with their fans, which kind of makes you question, is this actually real, this conversation with Andy Morin that most people are basically running with as fact at the minute? Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like Death Grips just have had no interactions at all. There have been many people that have told anecdotal stories of them basically waiting for the show to end, trying to catch them when they're leaving, and, being able to at least get something signed or exchange a few sentences. And from what these people are saying, with absolutely zero proof, by the way, and on Reddit, that these guys are genuinely down to earth, genuinely really nice people. Now, if you're not too familiar on Death Grips, you probably have seen the lead vocalist MC Ride or Stefan Bernay, and he is someone who is infamously known to just have a complete private life. He has no social media presence whatsoever, none publicly anyway. But one of the few things that people do know about him is some images were posted online of him painting. These are very old pictures. I think they date back to almost a decade ago, but it seems that the guy has absolutely insane talent. And I think this is one of the reasons why Death Grips are so successful, because they've got this huge diehard fan base because they put out such great music. But at the same time, we know basically nothing about these guys. So if anything slips, if anything's posted online, you treat it like you found lost treasure. Now, talking about the other members as well, you've got, for example, Zach Hill. Now, he's a huge piece of Death Grips because Death Grips is only 3 people. But at the same time, he also has numerous side projects. Like, for example, Face Tap, Astrological Straits. And he's also got other side hustles like a band called Hella that are known for projects like Hold Your Horse In and Tripper. There's even a collab he did once called Goon Moon. That came out in 2007. That is absolutely unreadable in modern times. Also, on top of that as well, one of his first solo albums that Zach did, Face Tat, that was one of the first collaborations between him and the bandmate Andy Morin. Now, when they met, they recorded an unreleased Waves album. Morin and Hill even had like a spin-off project from Death Grips called the ILYs, and they have such amazing family-friendly titles. Like, for example, I'm Gonna Have Sex, Itchy, 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 Articulate, I'm going so far into you. Doing things that artists do. Now, going back to the creative comments I was talking about earlier, if you're familiar with Death Grips, if you've listened to them, there's a band called The Residents, and it's really hard to deny how much they influence the Death Grips that we know today. Even Zach Hill has actually gone on record to say how much he loves The Residents in an official art book. And I think people need to talk about that more. Like, if you're inspired by a pre-existing, notion or individual or band, that's fine. I mean, look at me. I just copied Leafy is Here, but I was too stupid to play CSGO surf gameplays, so I played Prototype and Dying Light gameplay instead. And now I do YouTube for a living. Now, I've glazed them enough. I've talked about the history. Unfortunately, I do have to go into greater detail about the fan base. Ooh! If you don't share this video, if you don't like and subscribe on this video, a Death Grips fan will break into your room and piss on the floor. Now, again, I do have to say, I've been to Death Grips shows before. It is nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be. There have been a few horrendous shows, like, the throwing missiles one, the pissing on the floor thing. That's terrible, but it's not like that's every single show. It's not like, Death Grips has this absolute state of moronic dribblers that just sit there like waiting to basically start a fight in front of them to get clout or something. If Death Grips ever toured again, I would definitely never show my face. I would definitely go incognito, because there have been a lot of times where I've been recognized a lot more than I thought I'd be. I know for a fact the Death Grips subreddit is just going to run with that as well. Like, oh, it's all Pyro fans. I mean, yeah, probably is. Fair point. Now, how do I explain the worst of the worst of Death Grips fans? They are the equivalent of the Szechuan sauce Pickle Rick bit, but they're still doing it in current year. The funny thing is, my introduction to some of the more questionable parts of the Death Grips fan base was when Anthony Fantano, the #1 Death Grips glazer, had his heart shattered when he was interviewing JPEG Mafia and asked Mafia about what he thinks of Death Grips fanboys. The response is absolutely beyond rent-free.
Finally, who's more annoying? People on the internet who are alt-right trolls, or people on the internet who compare every experimental rap release they hear to Death Grips? Who's more annoying?
You really about to make me go in. Okay, you Death Grips fans piss me the off. If y'all say I look like MC Ride one more time, all you listen to is these pitchfork cosign bands like Animal Collective and Real Estate, and they all look like the same person. How the fuck do I look like MC Ride? Like, come on, yo. Like, really? That shit is racist. It's bullshit. I have Death Grips fans.
Now, there has always been a lot of stigma against Death Grips fans, definitely more recently, but originally when the band first came out and they started touring, even then, to be a Death Grips fan was kind of cringe or embarrassing. That's probably why there's been a huge migration at the minute, and everyone basically moved on from Death Grips and started listening to Blade and Echo. Like, all I'm saying is, if you have a single friend that is a weeb, a furry, or trans, they have definitely listened to at least one of those artists. Now, talking a bit more about Fantano, some people have even seemed to pin it on him, how it's his fault, how apparently it's his fans that have infiltrated the Death Grips fan base. I don't believe that, but looking at the subreddit, the opinions on Fantano are pretty split. Half of them love him, half of them absolutely despise him. But I don't think people understand how good that is for an e-celeb to be liked on that subreddit. Anytime I get mentioned on there, they basically just tell me to kill myself. There's another post I saw here as well saying Death Grips fans are embarrassing. Saying shit online is one thing, but IRL was at the Seattle show and you had literally people shouting at MC Ride, asking him to do the Thug Shaker, calling them the Grippers. Yo, come on. Now, I think a good comparison here is I saw Tenacious D, right, with Kyle Gass and Jack Black, and then straight after I saw Death Grips. I was kind of like traveling around Europe for a bit. I saw Tenacious D in Germany, and then I saw Death Grips in Poland. Tenacious D had I would say, a much more respectable fan base, definitely a more aged fan base. The Death Grips fans, on the other hand, were mostly people that were young adults. They were in their like early 20s, maybe late 20s. There were definitely a couple outliers as well. And the problem is with a lot of like meme culture is memes tend to die out quickly because so many people do the same bit over and over. You know, the VAR speech, I've done it a lot of times. Insanity is doing the same fucking thing over and over and over and over and over again, expecting things to change. So obviously when you go to a Death Grips concert, or if you're a super fan and you're chasing them around the country, it can be pretty fucking annoying to see the 45,000th person to hold up their phone, but they actually have the calculator app, or it's Subway Surfers, or it's Tetris. That, oh my god, I'm dying, guys. That's so funny. And the thing is, especially when I was younger, I would get that, right? You try to do a funny bit to put on your Insta story or on Twitter, that's fine, there's not a problem. But when like everyone's doing it, it becomes very cringe. I hate using the word cringe, but I genuinely can't think of another word to describe it. It's almost like that kind of secondhand embarrassment you feel. Okay, yeah, it's not as bad as everyone pissing on the floor. I will give you that. But still. And I also do want to say, if you're doing a funny bit where you're like playing Flappy Birds on your phone at a concert, it's whatever. No one should take the phone off you or anything like that. It's just if everyone's doing it, it's a little bit embarrassing. Again, it is nowhere near as bad as, let's say, throwing shit on the stage to get your favorite artist's attention. By the way, that infamous time I'm talking about was actually post-COVID in 2023. They were doing a show in Arkansas, and they basically just had to walk off mid-set because people were just throwing so much shit on the stage, and they just could not deal with the disrespect. I also looked into the story a little bit more about the Death Grips fan who peed on the floor. He was apparently dubbed the Philadelphia Pisser. Apparently as well, the article says that while he was queuing up to get into the show, he was throwing around a bunch of racial slurs. I'm sure he was on his phone at the time as well, phone posting on 4chan, replying to every single person on a thread saying that they're wrong. Now, unironically, I want to be devil's advocate here. I think one of the reasons possibly why the Death Grips fans at some of the events, at some of the concerts and tours have got a little bit out of hand. There were a generation, or I guess a quarter of a generation, of people that were brought up during lockdown, and a lot of people, because of that, had completely stunted social skills. Now, again, I'm not saying that anyone that had to stay at home during COVID or like during education, they ended up being like bad people. I'm not saying that at all. But genuinely, some of these people could have been deprived of the social skills that they needed. So when they go to a concert, they just have no idea of any kind of etiquette. I mean, guys, let's be real. Lockdown was a weird period of everyone's life. Minecraft somehow had a huge resurgence and now it's completely fell off again. Very strange times. But one of the saddest things about this incident is it could have been one of the reasons why Death Grips slowed down on production, because after that tour in 2023, they haven't really done much. There's been no new album. There's been no new tour announced since that whole fiasco. Oddly enough as well, they actually haven't released a full album since COVID. And again, because the band is so ominous, because they're so private, it's so hard to get actual updates from these guys. I mean, if you want to keep up with your favorite streamer, for example, Queso, the funny fat man, go follow one of his 50 update accounts that are ran by women. Easy to get some kind of update, but with Death Grips, absolutely nothing. It's crickets. Now, do I think the Philadelphia Pisser is the reason why Death Grips are shutting down? No, not really. I mean, that might have been the final straw, but at the same time, this is a band that's been going on for almost 15 years, and not everything lasts forever. People get bored. People want to move on to their own projects. Andy Morin, Zach Hill, they already have numerous other side hustles, and Stefan might have some as well. We just don't know about them because he's so much more of a private person.
Of course, I like Jimi Hendrix. Of course, there are others, but I'm not really into just naming them off. That seems boring.
Now, remember that note I mentioned at the start of the video that was wrote on a napkin? That was wrote basically almost 10 years ago. That was their first disbandment moment. But after writing that note, they still got back together and they still put out albums. But still, at the minute, it kind of has been crickets. Now, all of this does lead to the original message I talked about at the start of the video with an alleged leaked DM conversation between Andy Morin, one of the members, and a fan. This is the entire DM conversation. I was going to censor it originally because it is showing a private message, and as well because I saw Fantana do a video on it and he also censored the message out. But honestly, it's probably just going to lead people to go onto the subreddit and find the DM themselves anyway. But again, this is completely unconfirmed. This is the main thing that people believe is the reason that Death Grips are disbanding, if they even are in the first place. Now, me being the investigative journalist I am, I reached out to Andy Morin for comment. I did say to him, hey man, is this DM conversation real, or is it just someone like using it to farm likes? And he completely ghosted me. That's cringe. That's cringe. Now, that could be a multitude of things. You know, maybe he just can't be asked. Maybe he thinks anything else will be leaked and used, which is completely valid. So I really don't blame him for applying. But a lot of people seem to think that Death Grips is actually over, sharing their favorite moments from the band, you know, from tours, from albums, just saying thank you for being a part of their lives. Now, again, if this was any other band, any other solo artist, they would come out, or their manager would come out with a tweet saying, we're good, we're just taking like a mental health break. But because it's Death Grips, I promise you right now, we will never hear from them again until like a new album comes out, and they will give no advertisement for it, no announcement. They will just drop it out of nowhere. I also saw some takes on the Elon Musk IShowSpeed GIF website. Death Grips is allowed to break up. Their fans do not deserve them, and they were the best band of all time. I'm not sad. I got to see them 3 times, and they will always be carved into my brain. If Death Grips is broken up for good this time, thank God. I say this as someone who loves their music and has their lyrics tattooed on my body. The way they acted about them with their music was so fucking disrespectful from start to finish. I've also seen part of the Death Grips community, in particular the subreddit, attempt to self-cannibalize a little bit, you know, kind of pointing the finger, blaming each other, you know, kind of saying that you were the problem, you're the reason that they broke up, you were the toxic one. I'll be honest here, this sounds like a really huge cope and a stretch, but I see this as the exact same situation with Joshua Block, World of T-Shirts. Now, if you don't know, I've done like 5 videos on him, Jesus, but Joshua Block is World of T-Shirts, very famous TikToker. He's a chronic alcoholic, and honestly, I kind of stopped making videos on him because it was just sad. Like there's nothing to talk about. He will probably die soon. And I know for a fact what will happen. If he does actually die, people will turn the finger on each other saying, we could have stopped him. You could have stopped him. But you didn't do anything. And it's that kind of like self-cannibalizing to avoid responsibility that I see a lot in communities when something bad happens. Again, there are some bad people in the Death Grips fan base. There are some bad people in my fan base. There are bad people in every single community and culture imaginable, but I don't think that vocal minority, that 0.01% of Death Grips fans represent the majority, because again, I have met so many of you people like in the mosh pit or on the floor or just like at the bar afterwards or even queuing up, and you guys are genuinely some of the nicest people imaginable. Now again, what's going to happen with the band next, we have no idea. I can imagine Zach Hill or Andy Marin kind of moving on to more of their side projects more. Like for example, an idea of that band I mentioned earlier, Hella, having a reunion. But also as well, I'll be honest with you, this could all be a huge elaborate troll. This could have been Andy reaching out to someone saying, hey, I'm gonna fuck with this guy. Could you, yeah, we're breaking up. Oh, don't go post it on the subreddit. No, now everyone believes it. No, that's exactly what I didn't want to happen. Who knew that a fan would share my DMs when the same people in our fan base piss on the floor? I also saw some other wholesome posts on there as well. Again, can't verify if they're legitimate or not. Deciding to leak some of my own DMs with Andy Morin since we're into that now. And it was basically just a drawing of a character with Andy Morin looking a bit more like Strelok from Stalker, I'll be honest with you, with that rank 3 on the Norwood scale. But he said, wow, with little emojis. What a nice little fella. He ghosted me. Never forgive him for that. So the big question, is Death Grips actually offline? Never say never. That's what I think. I think the best possible way for us to get a Death Grips album now is for everyone to film an apology video with tears and put it on YouTube.